Today's podcast is brought to you by Patreon sponsor John Charlton. If you'd like to learn how you could sponsor the podcast through a small monthly recurring donation, go to schooloflaughs.com/Patreon. We're also brought to you today by Audible. You can download over 180,000 titles from Audible and listen to them right there on your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. It used to be called Books on Tapes. Now it's just Audible right into your phone. Check it out. You can go to audibletrial.com/School of Laughs to get your 30-day free trial and a free book today.
Welcome to the School of Laughs podcast, brought to you by schooloflaughs.com. Whether you're an aspiring comedian, a part-time pro, or a speaker who wants to become funnier, this is the podcast for you. We'll break down tools, tips, and techniques to help you get bigger, better, and more bookable. And now, here's the show.
Welcome to the podcast. Rick Roberts here, and thanks again to John Charlton for supporting the podcast through Patreon. I appreciate that, John, and look forward to seeing you on the next Google Hangout. I missed you this past time through. Hey, Rick Roberts here. We've got a interesting podcast today. In all of our years of doing this podcast, which is like 2.5 years or something like that, I've never really done an episode of if I was starting comedy today, what would I do? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And when I say we're going to talk about it, I'm going to have in with me Gavin Miller. Y'all remember Gavin from the first 50 to 70 episodes or so before he went off and had a baby. He'll be back in, and we're going to talk about what steps I would take, the 3 or 4 things I would be aware of and focus on if I was on the perimeter looking in, thinking about starting stand-up comedy. Real quickly, if you are starting stand-up comedy from scratch, I do have the online writing course. It takes you from 0 to 60 as quick as you possibly can go, and tells you everything you need to know about writing jokes, how to structure jokes, what to cut out of the joke, what taglines to add to a joke, how to do it, over a dozen different techniques. There's assignments in there. There's different levels to the online class where you can get feedback if you'd like from me on your homework, or you can just take it self-paced. All that's on schooloflaughs.com if you click the online class tab. All right, let's get into today's episode with our friend Gavin. A blast from the past. Joins me across the microphone, Gavin Miller. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, so good. I'm so glad to be here.
Gavin has a beautiful baby girl. How old is she now?
She's 8.5 months.
8.5 months.
Yeah.
So she's been on your radar for almost 17 months from the...
Almost more time out than in,
yeah.
as we've been told.
She's almost an outie now.
Yeah.
And things going all right?
I
know it's exhausting, probably.
It is. When you... I should listen to you about everything, but when you said it is going to be hard, I had no idea. I didn't know that I would be crying almost every day.
Right.
But then and laughing. It is the hardest thing that you can't describe it to someone. You couldn't describe it to me.
Right.
And I was like, I think I got this. Don't got this.
No, and you never will get it because I still don't got it.
Every day changes, and it's like every day is super, super stressful. It's the most stress that's good.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe that part.
The way I used to describe it and still could describe it is you could have 99% frustration all day long, then they give you that one little smile or a wink, and it erases all of it.
Yes.
So,
she was going to literally reach over to my TV where I have these very nice speakers, and she was trying to rip out the tweeter from the speaker.
Right.
And I went, hey, no, like that. And she just looked at me and then cocked her head to the side like a cheerleader or something and just smiled and gave me this huge grin. And I was like, oh, all right.
Rip the tweeter out.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't. It's just, it is as good as it is bad and as bad as it is good. It's both things at the same time.
Yeah, it just keeps you on high alert 24/7, and so you're pretty physically and mentally exhausted. I remember shortly after having our first kid, driving to a gig. It was I think it was in Little Rock, just past Little Rock, and I'm pulling in maybe 20 minutes from Alabama. I'm like, I took 65 instead of 40. And then I had to go all the way across the bottom, and I was like,
man.
That's baby brain,
100%. You don't process information in the same way anymore. That is, it's like you're learning how to use a new brain.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things. it's so different. Your priorities, all those things. It's just everything.
Everything.
There's nothing that's the same.
And you have to have one part of your brain thinking about the other person in your house now, from a safety standard, from everything thing, and so you have diminished brain power.
Yes, you're always on sort of life alert. Even when they're sleeping, and people think, oh, well, just put them down for a nap. They'll be fine. You can do whatever you're going to do. No, because every second you're thinking, I think they're still alive. They're probably still alive.
Right.
Should I go in there and check? No, if I go in there and check, that's crazy. That makes me nuts. They're fine, but I should probably go in and just check. And so then you look in and you try to see if their little chest is moving. It is panic-stricken. And then you're like, okay, this is my supposedly relaxing time.
Right. I know. It would be the point where a plane would go over and we're like, that didn't wake the baby up?
I know.
Something must be wrong.
Right.
Then we would tiptoe in and that would wake the baby up.
Yes. The floor creaks like one little bit, and they're like, hey, what's up? I'm up now.
And you're like, maybe we should get rid of the dog, because the dog doesn't understand.
Yeah. So this is why I came here today, because it got me out of the house, and I don't have to think about it. My wife is watching the baby. I don't have to think about it for at least the next 45 minutes.
Yeah, and that's a nice separation there for a little bit, get your brain going.
Yeah.
And also, the reason I wanted to have you in today is, I had never done a episode where we talk strictly about what if we started today? What if and you kind of restart and reboot? And I knew it would take 9 months to a year before you could even think about trying to do something for yourself.
And literally, there was a moment. It was like maybe 2 weeks ago, something like that, when my friend Lee Harden started to look at doing a show at a local coffee house that's near me. He was starting it up, first show, and I was like, I got to do this. Let's go. I was like, so I called him up, and I was like, when are we doing this? Like, what's going on? I will help you. I don't even know if I have any time to do on stage, but I'll help you run lights. I just need to get over there, and I need to start. I need to restart.
Right. Got to reboot, get in the system.
I felt the moment that it happened.
Yeah. Well, let's say if I was starting today, and I know a lot of people listening are thinking about starting.
Yeah.
Quite a few of you have been steamrolling for a while now, but I get emails every week. Somebody is on the fence about what to do. Like, where should I start? And, man, there's a million things I could say. But instead of typing those into an email, let me just get an episode out here.
For sure.
And, of course, it's, take it with a grain of salt, adjust as necessary for yourself. But if I was thinking about starting stand-up today, the first thing I would do is go grab me a couple of notebooks, pen that I enjoy using.
Yeah.
And make sure I have time to think about it. And so whether it's a spot in your house, maybe you got a back porch that's nice and quiet, maybe it's the hammock, maybe it's just as you're driving to work.
Yeah.
Start using that time to think about ideas you want to present on stage. Don't even worry about jokes yet. Just start listing everything that's ever happened to you that
You mean events? Or like thought, just...
I would start
but not try to
everything.
think jokes. Don't try to think jokes.
I think if you try to start thinking jokes right out of the gate, it's going to stymie you a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, that's not well crafted.
Paralysis a little bit.
Yeah, paralysis by analysis, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah, so I would get that notebook and I would just put headings on the top of each page. And one I would just put, stuff that happened to me when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And you might have 10 pages of that stuff.
Sure.
But, funny things that happened. Everybody listening had at least a dozen times when they were a kid where they thought they were going to die, like they had done something horribly wrong or they got injured. Yeah. Those are always good to talk about.
Yeah.
So just make sure you start kind of taking inventory of your life experiences. All right? Think about the times in your life where you were the most angry.
Oh, yeah.
Because those are like polarizing moments in your life that audiences can identify with all the emotions.
They have some energy behind them, yeah.
Yeah. So think about times you almost gave up on something, times where you thought maybe you're going to marry one person and that didn't work out, breakups, relationships. Relationships are always great material. Even if you're married now, you can still talk about relationships growing up.
Yeah.
Before you get into your own relationship. Practice writing jokes about people you no longer know.
Yeah.
Before you start writing about people you do know.
Yeah.
Think about people.
I like that stressful moments. Because I would just immediately brought me back. I thought, God, what do I talk about? And then I was like, the birth of our baby. Not that the birth was all that great, but I wanted to strangle the doctor.
Oh, yeah.
Who was, I almost lost my mind and was thinking, can I how do I escape a hospital with my baby?
I know.
And there was a moment that I was like, and so instantly when you said that, I was like, oh, that was a great one. That was so angry. I was almost hovering above the floor. I was so angry.
Oh, I'm with you. And everybody, if you've been through the childbirth thing or been on the side of the bed when it happened, that's definitely a story.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is, guys, there are enough proctological exam stories out there. I know that like registers number one on everybody that ever takes my class. Like, I got to write about this. I'm like, go ahead and write about it. But it's been done a billion times.
Yeah.
And it's really not the most clever thing to talk about in the first place. But go ahead and get it out of your system, write it. Think about your family members. Like, early on, I talked about my crazy Uncle Chuck, still do.
Yeah.
Your parents, they did some weird stuff. You spent a lot of time with those folks, hopefully. I know not everybody did. And maybe if you didn't, talk about that. And then from there, start to kind of figure out, where am I in the story? So I could have a story about my Uncle Chuck, but like if I'm not in that story, it's not as interesting to the audience as if I was.
Right. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So, maybe like I've got a story about my uncle. He's got a glass eye, and he never got a new one. Like, that's the thing that started me thinking. So I made up a story about us getting him a new one for Christmas.
Right.
So which made me think, well, we had to let him know that we're going to get him one.
Yeah.
And so what was his response?
Right.
And so I could have gone like, he could have got really angry, which would probably been predictable. Like, hey, man, you need a new glass eye.
Yeah.
But instead he's like, hey, you're the one that's got to look at it. Knock yourself out.
Right.
And for some reason, knock yourself out gets a laugh, whereas I tried 20 other things.
Yeah.
But now I'm in the story. I'm engaging with him.
Yeah, sure. Instead of just like my parents decided this would be a great idea for him to get a new glass eye, and that's how and you're devoid you're telling a story that you think is funny, but you weren't part of the funny.
Right. I can't just bank on the glass eye itself being funny.
Being funny enough. Yeah.
It has to be how he sees it. That's a bad word to say. He sees it. How he is in the joke, where I am, where the other people in the room are. And then, we could have done it for his birthday, could have done it for Christmas. Christmas seems like a bigger thing. Yeah. And then his reaction to it. And then,
it's real. It is real visual. I know. I did not mean as a pun either, but people can see Christmas. Right. People can see holidays. They know you're standing there in sweaters. They know you're supposedly having a great, family time, not a time to be discussing someone's glass eye.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
there's already some energy to it. Yeah.
Exactly. And they can identify with it, and then they might be able to envision somebody in their family that has something like that needs replaced or what have you. I mean,
that reminds me. I love this. Is going to be a great podcast. We're going to have the ADA over us. But I remember when I was little, and I was like maybe 7 or 8, something like that, and we stayed with my grandparents who had been taking care of one of our great aunts or whatever, and she was missing a leg. And when we slept on the floor, all of a sudden I rolled over from my sleeping bag and saw every leg that she had ever had underneath the bed. And so I was sitting there like, oh God. Like I didn't know that she necessarily didn't have a leg. It never crossed my mind, but I just saw maybe probably 6 or 8 like fake legs underneath a bed. And so that all of a sudden when you mentioned about the eye, I remembered that panic moment, sitting there. But I was thinking, like, could I replace that? Not just we were there visiting, but like, could I put it on a Thanksgiving or something like that, something to be thankful for, having a leg,
Oh yeah. Well, you could even think about, you could put your daughter in that situation.
Oh, yeah.
And say, like, even if you would never visit her now or if she's passed on or whatever, you could just say, we're visiting one of my relatives who has a leg, and my daughter, like, crawled on the bed, and all of a sudden she's, like, dragging
out a leg.
Like, you walk back in the room, and she's got, like, 6 legs, and yet she can't stand up yet, or something.
Right, yeah.
It's like, what are you doing? Yours work.
Yeah.
So that's very, like, I just picture, like, and why would you keep the extra legs?
I don't know.
I assume she grew out of them, or they made better ones. But
that's what I assume. But I didn't. My little mind didn't know that as I turned over and saw it for the first time.
Yeah, maybe like there's a couple. Some of the legs have shoes on them, and some don't. You're like, how come those?
My fancy dress leg.
Yeah. So definitely bring in.
I love that.
Any of your crazy family,
and
you might be somebody that wants to talk only about current events and all that stuff too. That's fine, but I think if you start digging into the family stuff, your stuff will resonate with audiences, and it's harder to steal.
Well, and you can also hit those political things from the perspective of your family. Like, even you can say, we were at the dinner table and my father said blah 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 about the president, and so then I said this. You can make it personal,
right?
Yeah,
you can take That's a good point. You can take things that you might be thinking of writing down, but you might be thinking it on the side, like, I can't say this; they'll boo me.
Yeah.
Or but if you're saying something that charges the energy up in the room that much, it's probably something you should say. But you can make your crazy uncle say it, and you can react to it in the way the audience reacts to it, or you can react to the way the audience reacted to it in the voice of your uncle or someone else.
Sure. Yeah.
But utilize that, all your family, all of your life experiences. If you went to college, think about roommates that you had.
But that's what we're writing down.
I think so. Just even if you're not writing the whole story, just write the name of it so you can come back to it later.
Don't forget. I forgot the leg thing. I should have written that down. I will write that down as soon as we get out of here.
You should. And it's like right now we're just getting the seeds. We're not even planting the seeds. We're just like going through and picking stuff from our brain, and more stuff will come as we write. When you start writing those stories, more
your
things will come.
Your brain just starts working on it, even when you don't think you are. It really does.
Yeah. But if you get those things down on paper now, you have no excuse for, I didn't have anything to write about.
Yeah.
Because that'll be the first thing that happens to you when you first start out. You're like, what can I talk about? I can talk about anything and everything.
Right.
So I'm going to talk about nothing because it seems too intimidating.
Yeah.
But if you have those stories, think about the stories you tell. Most people have one or two stories they tell a stranger or a new acquaintance to kind of break the ice.
Familiarize yourself with them. Yeah.
And then in that notebook too, list a heading for embarrassing moments.
Yeah.
Because there's some comics that make a whole living out of embarrassing moments. Mary Ellen Hooper, one of the cleanest comics out there. Yeah. All she does is just how she did something wrong. Yeah. And it's funny every single time.
Gosh.
So what was your most recent embarrassing moment?
I actually had... This sounds terrible. I had poop on my face in
a
Kroger.
In
the Kroger grocery store here because apparently I can't change a baby's diaper very well. And I was like having one of those moments where I guess I touched it touched my hand and then I touched my face. Of course, I washed my hand. The baby is totally clean. I walked out, checked out from the grocery store, and I had spent like maybe 15 minutes strolling around, got in the car, started the car up, looked in the rearview mirror, and realized I had poop on my face.
You're like, oh my God.
And I was like, what have we come to? Like, I used to be cool.
Right.
I went to college. I studied all these things. I played drums in front of thousands of people. And now I just walk around Kroger with poop on my face.
Like Aaron Neville got a big old milk dud sticking up there.
It was like, I thought I would, I just hopped in my new car and just rolled that
couldn't
thing
be any
down
cooler, and then couldn't be any less
cooler.
cool.
Yeah, I'm a cool dad. I got a baby. I got this.
Yep.
I don't
got
this.
Yeah. No, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Anytime. That's literally.
It was the moment. I was just like, this is who I am now.
Yeah.
Like, I used to be someone else. I am somebody now who this happens to.
Yeah.
I used to be a germaphobe.
Well, yeah, I think I throw that out
It's
the window when you got
over.
a kid.
Over.
So you could take that a lot of angles,
Yeah.
Like, what kind of friends do I have? Like, if I've got poop on my face, then tell me, there's no way they're going to tell me broccoli between my teeth or salad or what have you. I need to get a new bunch of friends or send me all the people you encountered along. Then you can backtrack the story. Like,
oh my gosh, yeah, because I went to the self-checkout thing and the guy had to like come over and help me like with the computer screen because it was broken. So I was like, I had an interaction. It wasn't like I just got out of there.
Yeah, man. And maybe you're wearing your Chipotle shirt. And you were the reason for all the.
Yeah, what was that? The sickness, I
don't know if it was Hep C or E. coli or whatever it was.
Yeah. Oh, God.
They wiped out a lot of people.
No, but that's my life now. So, so I'll for sure write that embarrassing moment, down.
Yeah, write them down. And then, and then talk to, another thing, too, is talk to your friends and say, has there anything funny happened? Or have I said something funny that you didn't tell me, but later you thought about it? And you start getting all that stuff in a place. That little notebook's going to be your best friend.
And notice when people do laugh.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Notice like the other day I was talking to my friend about some gutters that were on his house, and all of a sudden he just starts laughing, and I was like, "Oh, there's something there. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's relatable.
Yeah.
But there's some stress moment that he had that obviously he thought was funny, and so little moments like that where someone else's laughs. Now I can pay attention to that.
Yeah, pay attention, and once you get that first laugh and you realize it, push them harder and see if you can get a second.
Yeah.
And then, as soon as they walk away, write down a couple of notes. And then another thing too is in situations like that or any situation where you encounter somebody else, a lot of times you'll walk away thinking, "Oh, I should have said this. That would have been hilarious."
Yeah.
Well, in stand-up, nobody knows that you walked away.
Yeah.
So you say that, and that is part of the story.
Yeah.
So don't think don't think just because something happens that you have to tell it the exact way that it happens.
No,
So that's kind of my second little point here is you have the freedom to change any experience you've ever had.
Yeah.
To make yourself either A, look dumber, which is great for comedy,
Yeah.
or B, say that clever line that you thought of 2 days later to that
Yeah.
person that broke up with you and said that they needed more
Yep.
space, and now you can tell them exactly how much space they need.
Totally.
Whatever.
Yeah, and like if you're just starting, like you said, if today was the first day, all those experiences that you're writing down, those are the seed for what it will be, not necessarily the end product.
Not at all.
So that's like, it sounds very easy for us to like just laugh back and forth or whatever, doing some things, but then it does take some guts to even write some of those ideas down, because you're going to have to revisit them and work through them. But like, they're just the seed, so you don't be critical about the things you're writing down.
Right. In fact, that's a great point. Don't even think about being critical when you create. So you have two sides of your brain. One's creative, one's analytical.
Yeah.
And as you're writing stuff down, if the analytical side starts chiming in, it's like, hey, that's not funny. Don't write that down.
Yeah.
You got to silence that voice. There's a lot of different workbooks and stuff out there that I've gone through over the years, and my favorite was the Artist Way.
Yeah.
By Julia Cameron.
Yep.
And so it's I can't remember if it's a 13-week program or whatever, but one of her main things early on is when you hear that voice in the back of your head, give it a name. Yeah. The critic or whatever, or Jimmy or John or Susie or whatever, and just tell them to shut up.
Yeah.
And if you're writing something down, you're like, well, Susie told me this wasn't good, so it's probably great. You know, just shut up that stupid voice in the back. Because you can't not, even when you're typing, if you're trying to be grammatically correct and punctuation, forget that.
Yeah.
If you're typing on your computer all these ideas, just let it go and get them down.
Yeah.
Because you can always come back after you've really fleshed it out and start to edit it down.
And that's why I do like the physicality of writing it like with a pen or pencil in a notebook, because it forces you to sort of work on the idea as it comes out, as opposed to being able to just delete lines and then they're gone forever. It just rewrite it, but don't necessarily erase erase things as you're doing them.
Yeah, and even if you start to scratch something out, I really would advise scratching it lightly so that you can come back to it later when you're not angry or whatever that made you scratch it out and see there was something in there.
Totally.
You may not be ready to tell the joke yet. A lot of these stories you're writing down, you're not going to be ready right off the bat to hit the stage and just work them out.
Or ever. It may not even be.
Some may not, yeah.
I mean, as you sort of figure out what you're doing and who you are and all those things, they may not even be stories that you want to ever tell, but they may be some other idea.
Right.
An idea for a commercial, or an idea for a movie or a YouTube short, or something for somebody else,
Yeah.
An idea for someone else who's like, hey, let's do a writing session. What do you got?
Yep. A lot of ideas may not end up being a good joke setup, punchline kind of thing, but it could be a great short video.
Yep. Yeah.
A great short, maybe a tweet. You can tweet all this stuff out, too, when you start getting into it and see if there's some reaction to some of the stuff, too, But you want to be able to create without criticizing yourself and really create and give yourself time to work on it. So, this little idea book, I want you to keep it in your car. I want you to keep it on your desk at work. I want you to keep it next to your bed, because you will think of things, especially as you're drifting off to sleep.
Yep.
And there's a great Mitch Hedberg joke. It says, the other night I thought of a great joke before I went to bed and had to convince myself it wasn't that great, so I'd have to get up and write it down.
Yeah.
But when your brain finally is free, and that's why driving is important to give it that space, turn off the radio and just let your mind wander around.
The mind wandering thing, it sounds like laziness to somebody, because I just push forward with everything, and it sounds like laziness, but it is so vital, just to give your brain time to relax and get into that spot. I personally have to go somewhere else. It's not my house to be able to do that. But I don't know, as you start to work on it, as being your first time, you'll figure out where your places are, or when your times are. It's probably not right before, your wife gets home as you're watching the baby and you're trying to get the house ready. That's probably not your best time to be writing things. But middle of the day, maybe you get a Saturday free, go calm down and go. Do that. You got to give it the space. And you're going to find when you first start that there's not a lot of free time, because you're doing something already that you're going to have to give up, which is my third point, is what are you going to give up so that you can start stand up? The baby. I'm giving the baby up.
It's
over.
Right there you got 23 hours back.
Yeah, oh, God.
But unless you really take stock of your life right now, you're not going to be able to, just realistic expectations. Let's talk about that. You're not going to be able to begin stand-up unless you give something else up.
Yeah.
You've already filled your day somehow up until this point with something. Now, if you're a golfer, there's 3 to 4 hours every time you go out that you can recoup. If you're watching ball games, I know when first when I had kids, it was like I don't have 3 hours where I can watch the ball game.
Right.
And that was kind of good because I was big into watching the NFL. For no reason. What's the NFL ever done for me?
Nothing.
0.
Nothing.
And so I might watch 20 or 30 minutes of a game.
Yeah.
I might fast forward through a game and watch the 13 minutes of action.
Sure.
But to carve out 3 hours to watch the Titans means 0 to me now. To carve out time to watch the Kentucky Wildcats, different story. I'll still do that. And there's more games in that season.
You pared down what you were doing.
But I got rid of all the other stuff going on the side. And, because I just realized I can't go full steam ahead if I'm dragging all this other stuff with me. So think about what you have that you can get rid of. And I know some people are listening like, I'm doing the bare minimum now. That's why I want to be a comedian, because they do the bare minimum too.
Yeah.
Well,
sometimes you got to work super hard to go down to the bare minimum.
Right.
That's what I'm finding. Like, okay, so my wife works absolutely full time. She puts in 10-hour days, and I watch the baby at home. And then she has Thursdays off, and so that's when I go to work, and I go do construction. As we've talked about before, I do a bunch of construction stuff and building, and so that's when I go to work. And so it seems like I'm on a one of those little hamster wheels going 1,000 miles an hour, But like we've talked recently, and me and my wife had to have a talk and go like, okay. Yes, it is nice to have that little bit of extra money from you doing construction on the off days and stuff. But A, not only do we have no time together because we're never even in the same house almost at the same time, but B, like she was like, you want to do other things. If you don't start those things, you'll never start those things, because you're on that hamster wheel. And so we already said like, well, we're going to have to make a decision to take our income down a little bit so that I have some kind of time, like those moments, like being able to decompress my brain, work on something creative, go write jokes about baby poop on my face, which sounds ridiculous. It sounds stupid to most people who are just starting. Like, why would you go lose money or give up money that you need in order to go write these stupid jokes? And it's like, because I don't want to be doing construction for the rest of my life. I don't want to do it. I want to do something else. And now that my brain fog has started to clear, we've finally been able to have those talks,
Yep, you got to carve that space out, and it's going to take you a lot longer than you think. Like, that's the other thing. When you first start, you might think, well, I could start doing stand-up and probably like a year or two later and quit my job, and that is extremely rare. Yeah. Unless your job was really bad to start with. like that's kind of where I was when I got it. Well, depends. I was in 2 little phases when I first started, where I had a decent job, then I kind of quit that because I didn't like it, and then I had side jobs. But the key is really knowing that it's going to take a long time, and you have to be realistic. I mean, 2 to 3 years just to kind of get rolling. Yeah. And that's if you're hitting open mics 2 or 3 times a week. It sounds enough right now for some people to stop listening and go, I don't have that time. Right. Well, we just saved you that, so go back and do something else. Yeah. But if you really love stand-up, or you think you do, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take, once you get all these ideas written down, you're going to either hit open mics. You might take a comedy class. I won't definitely do that. Say that too hard because everybody knows I teach one, but I really wish I would have had one first starting out so I could at least see what to do with all that stuff.
That was my moment of starting, 2 years ago or however long ago that was. But I was literally doing some garbage work for somebody else, and I was literally folding his underwear, and I was like, I want out of this. I was like, how do I start the process of getting out? Right. And so I looked up your class and took that. But that was like my moment, of starting that whole process. Granted, the baby and getting married and all those things has, thrown, and quitting my job and all that stuff has has thrown wrenches in those things.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they're starting to get put back in the toolbox.
And for those of you that aren't familiar with Gavin, how he went from folding some man's
Yes.
underwear to having his own baby.
I was just going to leave that let it go.
He was a personal assistant, basically.
Yeah.
So,
Listen to the old episodes. They're great.
But yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling how long the ramp-up is. And a class is one of those things that can help you save a lot of time. And the investment usually is pretty small compared to how much time you're saving.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, you go to open mics and you just kind of work through it and see how to tell the jokes. You watch other comics. The tricky part about that is there's a few things. One is typically none of those comics are going to be interested in helping you at the beginning because they're worried about their own thing and they're not even watching you while you're up there.
Right.
Maybe the first time just to see, hey, there's somebody new.
Yeah.
Second, you're going to be going into...
I can see you have like a million years of knowledge that you're trying to like bring down.
Yeah, I don't want it to be overwhelming,
yeah.
but like when you hit an open mic and you're brand new and they say you've got 5 minutes, you're just going to go up there and talk for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you really don't know where your setups, your punchlines, or any of that kind of stuff are.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a little frustrating, and a lot of people end up quitting after doing 2 or 3 open mics because they can't figure it out.
Right.
Whereas a class may help you get things focused faster.
Yeah,
and
you'll know when things are happening or not happening and why they're...
The why is the most important.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know forever why my jokes that didn't work, and I didn't know why my jokes that did work, worked.
Right.
And it wasn't until I kind of defined it and put everything together for the classes that I'm like, okay, well, this is stuff that you can teach. So whether it's just watching people and learning that way, taking a class, but you need to find some place to kind of get the joke together and take it to the stage.
Either an open mic or a class or something.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have something to start. You can't do it at home. That's the thing. You can do the writing at home. You can't do stand-up at home.
Right, and that's the good and the bad. The good is you can always be working on material.
Yeah.
And the bad is there's only a few nights that you can probably get out
Yeah.
with your current situation to try things out. But you need to be trying them constantly and working those open mics and getting better, getting more fluid. It's just a lot of moving parts at the very beginning. And any of those things can set you back if you feel like you're not accomplishing what you set out to do. It's just not realistic. It's going to take time. The other thing to think about is also, honestly, it's just like investing.
Uh-huh.
Before you even spend money on a stock, you've already decided when you're going to sell high and when you're going to get out low.
Yeah.
If you're doing it pragmatically.
Yeah, sure.
And so with stand-up, what's a realistic time frame for getting rolling? 3 years of hitting it multiple times a week at night, getting the ball rolling. It's realistic just to kind of get yourself acclimated to performing on demand. When you don't feel good, boom, you can hit the stage.
Okay, so maybe 2.5 to 3 years, something like in that, to start getting paid for something?
Well, you can get paid earlier than that.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes it's not a lot.
Right.
But what I'm talking about is to feel like you've been through a majority of the situations that you're going to
be in. Okay.
And, I also a lot of times say 100 shows.
Okay. I remember you've said that before, yeah.
And 100 shows, you can do that in 3 months if you're hitting the stage pretty heavy. Yeah. You can do that in half a year easily if you're hitting the stage quite a bit.
You can do it in 1 week if you come back here for the Guinness Book of World Records.
That's true. But when I say 100 shows, though, you cannot do that same 5 minutes 100 times.
Yeah.
It's over 100 shows where it stretches out to be a year and a half or whatever it is that you're developing new material and you're getting better at writing stuff. And the stuff you wrote your first few weeks, a lot of that you'll never see again. It was like training wheel jokes.
Sure. You'll look back and laugh at the fact that you were even going to talk about that.
Right. Yeah. And also, too, you won't realize how many things you're talking about that everybody's already talked about.
Sure.
Because the first jokes every comedian thinks of are pretty obvious and everybody thinks of them.
Yeah.
So it's dial it into who you are, and that takes time. And it can take, like I say, at least 100 shows to kind of feel like I sort of know what I'm doing. I know how to put a set together.
Yeah.
I know how to tell a joke a little bit. And, from there, after 100 shows, I would take stock and say, is it worth what I've put into it so far?
Yeah.
And if not, should I put more into it or walk away?
Yeah.
Because last thing I want is a million guys clogging up open mics that are only doing the same 5 minutes 3 times a month.
Yeah.
And they wonder why they're not getting any better. Then I guess the last part of that whole thing is try to find some comedy buddies as you go through those open mics.
Yeah.
People that are starting the same time as you are good, but people who've been in it a little bit longer are great because they've been far enough past where you're at where they can tell you how to fix some of the stuff that you're doing wrong
working
now.
on.
So
that is so important.
I would write with the people that are starting at your same level for a little while.
Yeah.
And then try to always be grabbing onto somebody that's a little further along than you, and reciprocating, helping them with whatever you can for their time. But
I think that in a certain way that probably feels weird to some people who are thinking about trying comedy, because if you're like me, you don't want to talk to anybody else. You want to be introverted. You want to be, you think you're starting to stand up as a solo only venture, but like that totally isn't what it is. You're up on stage, I guess, alone, but all the other stuff that you're doing in order to get all those shows and show up and talk to the people who are running the show, talk to the other comedians, see if there's other shows, that stuff is very, group oriented, and it's not a team. It's definitely not a team.
No, but you'll notice there'll be like a group of sub cliques or what have you. I mean, if an open mic had 20 people, there's probably 4 or 5 little cliques within that. Yeah. The outliers, the people who are there every week, the people who are just super friendly and they get along with everybody and all that kind of stuff.
I haven't met that group yet.
Yeah, there's not as many of those as you would like.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of figuring out where you are in that group. And,
I
had a recent student just say, I've been doing open mics for a while in town, and people weren't inviting me on shows. And I asked one guy why. He's like, well, you've never asked to be on one of the shows. Do you want to be on my show? He's like, yeah. Okay, then he got on the show.
Done. Easy.
So
yeah.
You can wait for a while, but at some point, if you feel like you're not being asked to put on shows or whatever, just ask why.
Yeah.
And it might be something as simple as you've never asked why.
Gosh.
Or the other great thing is they can tell you why.
Yeah.
Well, because we always say to do 5 minutes, and you always do 10.
Yeah.
We always say it's going to be a
personal, Rick.
Clean show. You do a dirty set. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you got to have thick skin if you want to get into stand-up. You have to be able to ask for some feedback and then listen to it and take it objectively. Some things you might know why you did it, and they may not understand what was behind it. And stick with your guts. But if somebody's giving you some feedback on technique or structure or whatever it might be, listen really hard to that, because that's stuff that it's priceless.
I think the other thing that stuck out for me a little bit is because a lot of comedians are super smart and they internalize a lot of things, is that when you're at the shows and stuff, try not to judge yourself based on what other people are doing who may have been doing stand-up for 10 years.
Right.
I walk in and I see some guys who are running an open mic here, and I'm like, my Lord, that guy has zero problem. Like, he's amazing, from my perspective. And it's like, so if I compare what I go up and do 3 minutes and fail at to him, that's not good for me.
Right.
I can appreciate what he's doing and go like, oh, you see how he looks around the room, or see how he uses the whole stage, even though he's not obviously walking around all over the place like a frantic person. There's little things you can kind of pull from each person that's doing things, good or bad, but I mean, especially the good people. But it really hurt my feelings, I guess, what I said to myself after a few of those first open mics. It was like, you're no good. That other guy, he's so much better than you.
Right.
Like, he must have been just sitting at his table going, my God, this guy's an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, it was horrible.
Yeah, you're always going to be worse than a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you'll be better than a few. And then over time, you start moving down that ladder a little further, and then you're better than a lot of guys.
Yeah.
And then, hey, you're better than most. And that's when you start making a career out of it and launching it from there.
So keeping those, yes, the end goal, but also realizing you're at the beginning.
Yeah, it's a really long journey.
Yeah.
And it's a fun one. I wouldn't trade it for anything else.
Oh, my gosh.
Met tons of crazy people and had tons of crazy – and I think I've only got like 3 states left to go visit.
Oh, that's crazy.
I've only not performed and been paid to perform in 3 states. So that's a bucket list for a lot of guys.
Yeah.
But I'm really close, and I could probably knock those out if I just went and did it.
If you just asked.
Yeah. That's the thing is I'm waiting for somebody to ask me, but nobody in Connecticut knows I do stand-up. The folks in Hawaii don't think I want to travel there. So you 2 guys in Maine, get it going. If you're listening to this podcast,
send us out
and you live in Maine, Hawaii, or Connecticut.
Yeah.
I've not been paid to perform in your state, and I would love to.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So just to recap what we went over today, if you're starting today from scratch, have that notebook at all times. Jot down at least the title of a story that happened in your life, and then go back later on and fill in that page with all the details you could think of. That'll give you something to work on and take to the open mics and start working out, or take to your first comedy class and start working through. You have to give up something that you're doing now to take on stand-up, because it is all-encompassing.
It does.
I mean,
some time.
Once you flick that switch in your brain, and you get to the point where you can start seeing things comedically. It's all day long, every day. So,
Yeah.
But to have that time to sit down and write, and how long that time should be is different for everybody. But I would say give yourself at least an hour every couple of days.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't push it harder than an hour any of those days when you first start, because your new muscles getting it going. It's going to take you 20 minutes.
You'll burn out
before you start. It'll probably take you 20 minutes to get into your routine, 20 minutes to write, and then 20 minutes to kind of convince yourself you did enough for the day.
Yeah.
But block out some time. Realize what priorities you have already. There may be reasons why you should not even consider doing stand-up right now.
Yeah.
You know, whatever your household situation is like, make sure you're taking care of priorities first and responsibilities, and then get into this new venture. And then have that thick skin, be ready to take some criticism and take it and use that as fuel to make things better.
And then go enjoy it. Like, go enjoy the nervousness of it, and go enjoy it. That sounds crazy, but like, go and enjoy the process that you're writing jokes and getting to go tell them.
You'll never be more excited about stand-up than when you first start, because you have no idea about all the little things.
It's like electricity's going through you.
Yeah. So, enjoy that. It's the best time ever to fail, because nobody knows who you are, so it doesn't kill your career because you don't have one.
Absolutely, yeah.
And just get out there and knock it out. Cool, man. Well, Gavin, good luck with that baby.
Oh, God.
Hey, you got a little something on your face right
Thanks
there.
for telling me, finally.
Thanks again, bud.
Thank you.
Well, there you go. Gavin Miller popping back in to help us walk through the steps I would take if I was starting stand-up comedy from scratch today. And a lot of you out there listening are thinking about it. And hopefully today gave you some ideas of at least what to expect, some realistic expectations, and what goes into becoming a stand-up comic. Another reason I wanted to have Gavin in today is to celebrate. We are now at 100,000 downloads of the School of Laughs podcast. Compared to other podcasts, I don't know if that's great, not good. I have no idea, but I think it's impressive, and I appreciate you guys listening and downloading us over 100,000 times into your players and into your ears, and hopefully some of this advice is going to good use, and you're moving forward in your comedy career. That's going to be it for today. Don't forget, join over there, audibletrial.com/School of Laughs if you want to pick up a free audiobook. That helps us out here on the podcast, as does Patreon. I'll talk to you guys next week. Stay funny and stay safe.
Thanks for listening to the School of Laughs podcast. If you'd like to hear more School of Laughs podcasts, you can find them on iTunes and Stitcher.com. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. For information on upcoming live and online classes, visit schooloflaughs.com. Until next time, stay tuned, stay focused, and stay funny.